All right. Hello, Julie. Welcome. Hello, Rick. Welcome. Welcome to those joining. Please tell me how my audio and video are. How's my connection? All good. Hello, Gretchen. Hello, Anna. Hello, Mariah. Gregory. All right. Thank you. Get started in a couple of minutes as usual. Welcome, Yankee. Microphone has a little echo. That's interesting. Let me see something. Just double checking. All right. Hello? Is this any better? It could be the room, although I did Dhammapalooza here last week. Same equipment, same place. Louisa? All right, very good. So I'm here in my last night in Colorado until probably next April anyway. Very productive last couple weeks. Hello, Alan. Well, tomorrow afternoon I fly back to Jersey. Hello, Kristen. All right, we'll get started in about 1 minute. We'll share screen. Hello, Andrew. Welcome to the community, Andrew. It's good to see you with us. Andrew's a friend from Colorado. Just joined the Discord yesterday. All right. Let's get started with some chanting. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Attiko tena bhagavata janata passata arahata samma sambuddhena vyakatani va vattunhi avyakatani va cha vattunhi yani bhagavato savakehi tattatateva dhare tabbani kattancha avyakatang bhagavata Sassato loko ti abhyakatang etang bhagavata asassato loko ti abhyakatang etang bhagavata antava loko ti abhyakatang etang bhagavata anantavo loko ti abhyakatang etang bhagavata tanjivang tang sarirang ti abhyakatang etang bhagavata Anyang jivang anyang sariranti abhyakatang etang bhagavata hoti tatagato paramarana ti abhyakatang etang bhagavata nahoti tatagato paramarana ti abhyakatang etang bhagavata hoti cha nacha hoti tatagato paramarana ti abhyakatang etang bhagavata Neva hoti nana hoti tatagato paramaranati abhyakatang etang bhagavata evanko abhyakatang bhagavata kasma chetang abhyakatang bhagavata nahetang atta samhitang na addi brahma charyakang na nibbadaya na viragaya na nirodhaya na upasamaya na abhinyaya na sambuddhaya na nibbannaya samvattati tasmacetang abhyakatang bhagavata katang cha abhyakatang bhagavata idang dukkha ti ni ko abhyakatang etang bhagavata ayang dukkha samudayo ti ko abhyakatang etang bhagavata ayang dukkha nirodho ti ko abhyakatang etang bhagavata ayang dukkha nirodha gamini patipadati ko vyakatang etang bhagavata evang chako vyakatang bhagavata kasma chetang vyakatang bhagavata attasamhitang etang addi brahmacharyakang nibbadaya viragaya nirodhaya upasamaya abhinyaya sambuddhaya nibbanyaya samvattati Tasma cetang vyakatang bhagavata tatra yang bhagavata abhyakatang tang abhyakato ti dare tabbang yang bhagavata vyakatang tang vyakato ti dare tabbang buttang hetang bhagavata iti yang bhikkhave maya vyakatang tang abhyakato ti dare ta yang maya vyakatang Tang vyakatoti dharetati. All right, English. Dhammas that the Buddha declared and did not declare. There are Dhammas that have been declared and ones that have not been declared by the Sublime One who knows and sees, the worthy and fully enlightened one, which should be remembered as such by the disciples. What has not been declared by the Sublime One? Whether the world is eternal or the world is not eternal has not been declared by the Sublime One. Whether the world is finite or the world is infinite has not been declared by the Sublime One. Whether the soul is identical with the body or the soul is different from the body has not been declared by the Sublime One. Whether the Tathagata exists after death or the Tathagata does not exist after death has not been declared by the Sublime One. Or whether the Tathagata does and does not exist after death, or the Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist after death, has not been declared by the Sublime One. These are what have not been declared by the Sublime One. Why have these not been declared by the Sublime One? Because they are not beneficial to the holy life, nor are they beneficial for dispassion, for detachment from greed, nor for cessation of suffering, nor for tranquility, nor for the realization of truth, nor for the attainment of enlightenment, nor for the attainment of nibbana. Therefore, they are not declared by the Sublime One. What has been declared by the Sublime One? This is suffering, has been declared by the Sublime One. This is the cause of suffering, has been declared by the Sublime One. This is the end of suffering, has been declared by the Sublime One. This is the way leading to the end of suffering, has been declared by the Sublime One. These are what have been declared by the Sublime One. This is where the Buddha says in another way, both formerly and now, all I have taught is dukkha and the cessation of dukkha. Why have these been declared by the Sublime One? Because they are beneficial for the holy life. They are beneficial for dispassion, for detachment from greed, for cessation of suffering, for tranquility, for realization of the truth, for attainment of enlightenment, for attainment of nibbana. Therefore, they are declared by the Sublime One. What has not been declared by the Sublime One should be remembered as not declared, and what has been declared by the Sublime One should be remembered as declared. This has been said by the Sublime One, because remember what has been not declared by me as not declared, and what has been declared by me as declared. All right. Okay, friends. Well, it is Monday night. That means it's time for another festival of Dhamma, Dhammapalooza with the Maggasekha community. So welcome, everybody. And as we all know, this Dhammapalooza is always a community-guided event. We just did some chanting. Later on, we'll do some meditation. What we'll do in between, who knows? Because that's up to you. So for the next couple minutes, we'll see how things go and what kind of Dhammapalooza we'll have tonight. If you have any questions, you can put the questions in the chat. If you have any topics you'd like me to give a Dhamma talk on, you can put those in the chat. If you have any topics you'd like the community to discuss, because you know I always encourage you guys talking to each other in the chat, supporting each other, encouraging each other, and maybe even a little bit of debate, as long as it doesn't get too disputatious. So these things are all on the table and more than welcome. And if nobody has anything, well, we could always play some sutta roulette. There's always suttas, if nothing else. Hello, Visakha. Sick again, Visakha. The divine messengers won't leave you alone, will they? The divine messengers really like you. And Abby these days. Well, may you be well. Mithras Matt. That's not a name I don't know if I'm familiar with. Have you ever been with us before, Mithras Matt? I feel like I would have remembered somebody that had Mithras in their name. Hello, John and Audrey. Hello, Anna. Let's see. Rick Sworn says, the monastics in traditional Buddhist countries try to dominate and control people like many of the religious groups in the West, or do they freely offer the Dhamma for the benefit of all beings? Both. There's, especially in countries that are kind of like where the monasticism is interspersed with the government and with the ruling and things like this. There's lots of opportunities for abuse. There's lots of opportunities for corruption. I mean, it's not for no reason that there's literally a monk police in Thailand. Like they literally train monks to be kind of like policemen to like investigate other monks and their bad deeds and things like this. But the monastic order is filled with people who have greed, hatred, and delusion. Just like the Catholic Church, just like pick your corporation or pick your government or pick your whatever. It's all greed, hatred, and delusion. So sure, there's I'm sure there is lots of you know, domination and control and such like this. And there's also really wise, good monks. It's always going to be a mixed bag. Just like, I growing up Catholic, I left the church, but I never had this view like everybody in the church is bad and all priests are bad and things like that. I actually, something that I've always done is not really pay much attention to right. That's what I did with priests and, growing up, and that's what I've done with monks. Well, you can learn what not to do from from bad ones, but yeah. So I think it's a mixed bag. I think Westerners have an idyllic, unrealistic view of what Buddhism is. Just like they do with Christianity. They a lot of people in the West really mock Christians because they don't live like Jesus. Who the heck can live like Jesus? Should we mock Buddhists because we can't live like Buddha? Right? It's an ideal that we're striving for. We're not perfect. So this is the nature of the world. Right? There's no perfection in the world, only by the few perfected ones that exist. That's the only perfection in the world. Hello, John and Audrey. Oh, I think I already said that. Let's see. Oh, Matt from the last virtual retreat. All right. Yeah, cool. Welcome, Matt. Gregory has not a question, but a kind of exploration. It would be good to explore why the Buddha did not declare self equals the body, or self does not equal the body. Pali word is atta. Does that give you a hint? It's kind of like the three conceits. The conceits of I am better than, I am worse than, and I am equal to. Why is equal to a conceit? Because you're starting from the framework of I. You're starting from the framework of atta as opposed to anatta. So that's where it almost seems like it's almost like a linguistic trap that the Buddha refuses to fall into, right? The Buddha has to be very careful and very thorough when talking about anatta, because there's a tendency for people, and you see this even in later works, even you kind of see this desire for some kind of atta to be there, which is a dangerous thing, even though the Buddha says sabbe dhamma anatta, all phenomena are not self. There's literally nothing that is atta. So that's probably going to be my best bet as to why the Buddha refuses to answer this question about the atta. It's kind of like when Vacchagotta asked the Buddha if the self exists or the self doesn't exist, and the Buddha didn't answer. And when asked by Ananda why he didn't, the Buddha said that it would be confusing to Vacchagotta, and if he said that it did exist, he would be agreeing with the eternalists, So the people that believed in, the a kind of permanent soul, and if he said it didn't exist, then he would be agreeing with the annihilationists, the materialists, the people who didn't believe that there was anything after this life. So these are very refined, nuanced, complicated things around the subject of anatta and atta. Kristen says, "What does Bhante think about the lay renunciant path followed by some practitioners?" Wait, did I miss something from Anna? Yes, I did. I thought so. Okay. If I read non-Theravada text, does it that matter if the point is Dhammic? Read whatever you like. You know, read what you like and follow what calls to you. World Buddhism is much, much bigger than Theravada. I mean, that's what I did. I didn't start out in Theravada. I went through Vajrayana and Mahayana. And I just knew none of that was for me. Once I found what was for me, I stuck with it. That's pretty much how it works with meditation and all kinds of things. Try a bunch of things and stick with what works. What does Bhante think about the lay renunciant path as followed by somebody like Kim Allen? I have no idea who Kim Allen is, so I don't know the specifics. Um, you know, even in the suttas, you have examples of people who can't become full monastics, but they basically live like monastics in their life. Um, and indeed, to become something like a non-returner, you basically will have had to be living lay life basically like a monastic. Um, but there's many famous such examples. Well, not many, at least a handful. There's Householder Chitta, which we've been reading yesterday when we were reading our Suttas Monday on our Discord. We read about 7 or 8 suttas of Householder Chitta, who taught monastics and who was quite wise. And, and then there's Gatikara the potter, who was actually the person responsible for Buddha Gautama making the vow to become a Buddha in the future. And this was a person who couldn't ordain under the previous Buddha because he had to take care of his parents. But he basically lived like a monastic lifestyle otherwise. And I believe he passed on as a non-returner. Because then later on, thousands or however many years later it was, the Buddha spoke to him as a deva, as from the divine abodes. And this is in the suttas, by the way. So yeah, you can live as ascetic and monastic as you wish in your lay life. I mean, I tried to do that a little bit. I tried to live by the 8 monastic precepts in lay life, and it just didn't feel right for me. It didn't feel like it added to my practice at all. So I tried it for like maybe a month or 2 months or something like that, and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do this anymore. So different people will have different inclinations, but it's always a voluntary thing. I don't think most monastics encourage lay people to be this way. But if you are an individual who's inclined towards that, why not? Anna, there's a few things from the Mahayana that I like. Two examples that I use. The first one I don't use as much, but it's something I'll always remember. The second one I use quite often. The first one was my very, very first retreat was actually a Mahayana retreat. It was at the Bodhi Monastery, with the Chinese Chan Monastery in northern New Jersey, which is where I became a Buddhist 3 years before that. And so I went to this retreat, and it was basically a Mahayana retreat, but they did have one Theravada monk who did some Theravada doctrine teaching. And you know, these Chinese bhikshunis were talking about arahants and bodhisattvas and things like this. And then they told the story of this bodhisattva, and I thought, hey, I don't know about this bodhisattva stuff, but I really like this guy's attitude. I kind of like how he is. And it's called the non-disparaging or the never disparaging bodhisattva. And his shtick, his claim to fame is that he always sees the Buddha nature in people. So he is always encourages. He never has feels distraught or despair from people. And so these Chinese bhikshunis are telling the story of how he would go into the towns, and he would be like, I won't disparage you. Buddha nature this. And apparently he was really annoying to people. And they were like trying to throw rocks at him to get him to run out of town. And while he's running out of town, he's going like this. He's like, I'll never disparage you, Buddha nature. May you be Buddhas, or whatever. I forgot the specifics. But I kind of like that guy. He's a bit annoying. But I like the attitude. I think that's a pretty cool attitude. And the other one, of course, is, well, depending on who you ask, many people kind of disown this guy as being traditional Buddhist. But, Mr. Crazy Wisdom, Trungpa Rinpoche, who created Shambhala tradition, had that wonderful term, idiot compassion, which I use all the time. And is that in the suttas? No, not explicitly. Implicitly, yes, it is definitely in the suttas. Because compassion without wisdom is stupid and dangerous, basically. But idiot compassion is wonderful. I just love it. It's so perfect, especially as somebody who worked the career I did and has seen what I've seen. Idiot compassion causes a lot of suffering in the world. So yeah, there's, I don't go out of my way to learn from Mahayana. But if I'm somehow, talking to Mahayana monastics or whatever, or, it comes to me that I can learn something, sure, why not? It's good to be open. I mean, I'm a pretty fundamentalist, dogmatic, early Buddhist text person, but I'm still open to learning from other traditions, so long as I don't spend much time trying to do that. If it comes to me, all good. Karuna's never heard of idiot compassion before? Oh boy, I could take up the whole 2 hours at Dhammapalooza talking about that. But I'll get to that. But Rick has a question first. Bhante, can you share some reflections on learning and practicing the Dhamma by interacting with animals? Are there examples in the suttas? In the suttas, there's not really much interaction between monks and animals in the suttas. Not, or at least nothing's coming to my mind. There's probably more interaction between monks and devas in the suttas. I mean, there's obviously the Buddha explaining, what you might die from, or reflecting on, the Kanda Parita, where you're reflecting on that the creepy crawly things are finite and the Dhamma is infinite, these kind of things. But there's no, like, I think maybe what you're looking for are like the Jataka tales. Like in the Jataka tales, there's like stories of, like the Buddha and animals and things like that. But I can share some of my own reflections. Specifically, I guess one of the reflections, one of the things that I always remember is my evolution of mosquitoes and spiders. I can remember, I probably a lot to do with Ajahn Chah, to be honest with you, Ajahn Mosquito. But I still vividly remember the day when I was visiting Bob, and I don't think I was living there yet, or maybe I just started living there, and I was meditating out in the woods, and I could feel that I was getting, the blood bar was open, and there's mosquitoes on me, and I'm just being mindful and following my breath and giving the mosquitoes metta, and just kind of enduring. The itch afterwards way worse than the actual sucking of the blood, but it's just like giving the mosquitoes metta and saying, have my blood, it's no problem, these kind of things. I remember I opened my eyes and I counted 12 mosquitoes on my arms, having a bit of a feast. Now, of course, I've never been in like Thailand or places where like the mosquitoes might have something that kills you. So I don't know how I'd feel about that, but still, you can't really escape, especially something. You ever watch people or maybe you do this yourself. They're outside, fly. What did that do? 2 seconds later. So for like 3 hours, you're just like, that's a perfect lesson in life. It's like, well, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same things over and over again and thinking of expecting a different result. What are you going to do? Okay, and so what if you kill that one? What about the million others that are around you? So it's a really interesting lesson in patient endurance and acceptance. Same thing with spiders. I can remember the first time, this was quite a little bit before, maybe like within the last year before I left for Bhavana. I was at a retreat and I had in my kuti, and I had a big spider in my kuti. And I was just like sitting on my bed, trying to go to bed. And I'm like, I don't want to turn out the oil lamp because I don't know where this spider is going to be. All of these things. And I did what I had done for years beforehand when I would be meditating in the woods, sleeping out at night in the woods by myself. I just practiced lots of metta, giving the spider metta. I also did like kind of parita. I think I kind of just like, okay, I have goodwill. I have metta for you. Don't hurt me. Stay in your area. I'll stay in mine. No problems. I even, I think on the second or third day, I gave it a nickname based on like the color on its thorax and things like that. And so this was a 9-day retreat. So by like day 4, I'd be coming in and I'd say, hey, I forgot what I called it. I'd just be saying like hello to the spider, talking to the spider and things like that. And from that point on, I just gave lots of metta to spiders. And even like when I lived at Bhavana, we'd have these wolf spiders. And wolf spiders it's hard to get they're basically maybe 2/3 the size of my hand. The bigger ones can be almost about like the width of my hand. And I can remember, the times where they would be in my kuti. And again, it was just like, you do your thing over there, take care of the bugs for me. I'm doing my thing. As long as, we don't cross, all good, no problems. I remember one time the one was literally right at my nightstand. That was a bit of a shock, but I was okay. I was like, okay, you're a bit close. Let me get the big capture and release. I had like a big like glass bowl capture and release kind of a thing. But yeah, I have a couple different, experiences. Like when you practice lots of metta, when you spend time in the woods, when you spend time among animals, you'll notice that the metta makes a difference. How many times have I mentioned that I've had spiders, do walking meditation with me? I've had big wolf spiders just come right up to me and just stop and just be there for like a half hour, just right in front of me. It was okay, I have lots of metta for you, but my metta is going to turn into fear as soon as you get on, touch me. So don't touch me. You stay over here. Here's my boundaries. But yeah, animals can be really good for practicing metta, especially if you spend time in the woods, in the wilderness, and have fear arise. Oh, hello, Jay. Welcome from down under. All right, so talking about idiot compassion. So the first time I heard idiot compassion was one of the, I think I only read one, maybe two Pema Chodron books in my life. And that's where I got the term idiot compassion from her. Obviously, she got it from her teacher, who was Crazy Wisdom, who, even though he's Crazy Wisdom, and I really wouldn't listen to much of what he says otherwise because of Sila. He's right about this. He's definitely right about idiot compassion. So one thing that's important to understand about the suttas, and the Buddha doesn't explicitly, like, there's no sutta that's what the distinction I make is the difference between mundane compassion and transcendent compassion. People always say, and they praise, the Buddha had so much compassion, but this is not the compassion of a mother for the child. This is not the compassion for your family member or a close friend. That's not what this is. One big clue is, how does the Buddha teach you how to practice compassion? The same way with metta. In one quarter, likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above, below, and all around, to all into as myself, I abide, pervading the entire world with a mind of compassion. Just like the Buddha doesn't necessarily teach giving metta to individuals. This is a compassion that transcends. Very different. Right? That's how we practice. What is it? Just like metta is like, you practice metta like the sun. your goodwill going to all beings without distinction, without categorization, without discrimination, without, I don't like this politician, I don't like those people from that party or whatever. It's the same thing with compassion. That's the Buddhist transcendent compassion. What's mundane compassion? I already explained it. The compassion of a mother for her child. That's mundane compassion. Why is it mundane compassion? Because mundane compassion is we have compassion for the people in our in-group, not so much the people in our out-group. We have compassion for our family members, not so much for everybody else. We have compassion for the people on our side, not so much for the people on the other side. It's compassion based off of emotion. Again, it's not necessarily that it's bad. It's not innately bad, but compassion, acting out of emotional compassion without mindfulness can cause just as much damage as acting out of malice with intention. This is why I like to say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Now, technically, literally in Buddhism, no, this is not the case. Obviously, because your intentions are, what matter. But out of compassion, out of thinking that we're the ethical ones, that we know the right thing to do, all of these things, we think we can do things, and it causes a lot of trouble, a lot of harm. So idiot compassion is an enabling compassion. It's a compassion without wisdom. The Tibetans have a thing where just like a bird needs two wings to fly, so too does compassion need wisdom. Right? So it's very wise. This is something that's very lost in the West today, where we think that compassion is just an unalloyed good. Somebody's doing something out of compassion, that must mean that everything's great, no problem. No, that's not good. And again, I've seen this many times throughout my life. Just because I was, how many times have I told you all, like I grew up like wanting to be a knight. I grew up like trying to follow chivalric values and helping people and things like that. And how many times growing up where I thought I was doing good and helping people, and it wasn't actually good, or they didn't really want me to help them the way I helped them, and all these things. That helped me a lot. And of course, then having my job, when I worked Child Protective Services, and some of the most blatant enabling is, the grandparents who have, I get involved in the case because their grandkids are either neglected or at danger of abuse because they're, the mother or the father is, has drug abuse or mental health or whatever. And the grandparents, out of compassion for their children, obviously, I can never blame them in that, because it's obvious that you don't want anything bad to happen to your children. But what I would do when I would talk to these grandparents who are enabling their adult children, their adult the parents on my caseload, I'd say, I understand, but you enabling them, the parents, is harming your grandchildren. And oftentimes that would kind of like click something in their mind. Like, oh, yeah, I guess that is, isn't it? So again, there's nothing wrong with compassion, but mundane compassion has to be coupled with wisdom. Compassion, just like anger, just like lust, just like any kind of strong emotion that arises, is blinding. Right? We if we act out of those if we act in a blind way like that, something good might come out of it, but just as equal a amount of time, something bad might come out of it too. So this is why mindfulness is so important. And if you really want to practice the Buddha's compassion, which is hard to do because really the Buddha's compassion comes from wisdom. But if you really want to practice the Buddha's compassion, you try to have compassion for the oppressor as well as the oppressed. You try to have compassion for the people on the other political team, the people who don't think like you do. When you're practicing that, then you're getting closer to the Buddha's transcendent compassion. This is how the Buddha's compassion comes from insight. And this is why the Buddha teaches compassion as being something expansive, like Mahagada Chaito Vimutti, release of mind, exalted release of mind. As you understand the plight of beings in samsara more deeply, it doesn't matter who it is. You have compassion for everybody that's stuck in this hellhole called samsara. Doesn't matter who it is, what they did in this life, what they did in past lives, what they believe, doesn't matter. You start to develop a compassion for all beings simply because we're siblings in suffering. We're stuck in the samsaric, cycle together. The Buddha talks about this in terms of the mountain. How an awakened being is like the one who has the view on top of a mountain and looks down upon all the beings stuck, mired in views and craving and harming and suffering and all these kind of things. And that naturally springs forth compassion. Just like, the higher you go up the mountain, I don't know how high I am up the mountain in terms of relation to the top, but I'm high enough to start to understand, to be able to look down and see at least a little bit. Jesus, this is horrible. I don't want to contribute to all this crap. How about I just have compassion for all beings? And sometimes that compassion means you have to be judgmental. Sometimes that means you have to be rough and hard on somebody. Right? Compassion doesn't mean you just let people do whatever they want. And sometimes you have to be hard on people out of compassion for them. There's even a sutta where the Buddha explains how he has to be hard on his disciples sometimes out of compassion for their well-being. That's how parents should be. Right? Not your children's friend, but the parent who knows what's best for them. And sometimes you have to put your foot down and be hard on them. Right? Sometimes they have to, suffer a little bit. But that little bit of suffering then will be much better for them later on. So this is real Buddhist, transcendent Buddhist compassion has a higher view, seeing from a higher perspective than the mundane on the ground compassion. All right. I think I said enough. Like I said, I could probably talk more on that, but we don't have enough time for such things. Let's see. Jay says, a few times I've had spiders abseiled down in front of my face, kind of scary, but it seems like they just wanted to say hi. Yeah, it's interesting. I remember one time in my kuti, I guess one of the spiders had babies, and they're like really, really, really small, and they're like clear or white. And I was watching a bunch of them like learn how to use like their web. Always like you watch like Spider-Man movies when he first becomes Spider-Man and he's like learning how to use the web and he's falling all over. And it was so funny watching these little spiders because it wasn't like they were perfect spider web users. Like they were actually like bumbling and fumbling and falling and things like that. It was pretty funny. Pretty funny to watch the spiders that way. Have I tried the Mahasi method? What are your thoughts on commentary-based meditation techniques generally in terms of effectiveness? I think the closest I've ever come to the actual Mahasi method is from Bhante Yutta Dhammo. And I don't know how pure Mahasi method that is because it's, his teacher, Siramangalo, is a Thai, was a Thai Ajahn who learned from Burmese. So that's probably the closest I've ever been to it. I don't, at least with walking meditation, I do not like the Mahasi method walking meditation. And actually, I felt justified in it because Ajahn Chah kind of said this similar thing. And that's the meditations where you go like really slow, like lifting, heel up, and down, and heel down, like the 6 steps, lifting, like that really slow walking meditation. I don't like it. And the reason I don't like it is because it's fake. It's not like it would be the same as you're trying to follow your breath and you're going like that's fake. How are you following your breath when you're when you're like making it this like when you're turning it into this production? What you're supposed to be doing when you follow your breath is just observing the breath coming in and out with no control. Obviously, we control, but the ideal is you're just trying to do that. The same thing with walking. If you're doing that really slow thing, sometimes I used to do, like I did parkour and things after my weight loss surgery. So my balance is pretty good. But even me with my doing that, I have to make sure like I'm balanced, right? My foot's in the air. And it's like, no, I don't know what kind of insight you're going to learn from that. I mean, I know that sounds harsh, but yeah, I mean, I tried it and I do, when I teach people walking meditation, I do give them that as an option because I know it's, some people that's a good thing. Some people will like it, but I don't, I don't view it as worth doing. But that's me. How many hundreds of thousands of people do it, and probably a lot of benefit for them. But I'm trying to when I'm practicing, I want to practice where I'm not manipulating and controlling or creating something that I'm then observing. I want to see how naturally observing what is naturally there. All right, Anna, well, have a good night. And I see we are at the end of the chat. Why don't we do some sutta roulette and then we'll do some meditation. I think this time maybe we will do the Anguttara Nikaya. Well, see, this is the thing, Mithras. This is what I said. There is no sutta that talks in this way. It's much more implicit than explicit. This is you get the clues from how he teaches how to practice compassion, right? And it's like, so my understanding and how I explained it is really from my years of the suttas and kind of things amalgamating and coming together in my mind, right? There is no like idiot compassion sutta. It's just, that's just not how it is. But if you have a broader understanding of the suttas, then you connect these dots and you can understand that this is what the Buddha is talking about. And so unfortunately, I can't give you a sutta. I wish it were that easy, because I really try to always stick to that. But even sometimes, sometimes either things are sometimes things are very kind of esoteric or harder to understand, and you need somebody, and even the suttas might not tell you much, but somebody like a Bhikkhu Bodhi or my preceptor Bhante Gunaratana, people who have been reading through the suttas and understanding the Pali for like 30, 40, 50, 60 years, they're able to connect dots that are not explicit, and they're able to say, this is how it is in understanding. And I can do that to a certain extent. That's something that I can do as somebody who has been reading through the suttas now for 15 years. I'm nowhere near to the extent of a Bhante Ji or a Bhikkhu Bodhi, obviously, but just enough to understand that that's kind of how it works. And so, no, I can't give you a sutta number, unfortunately. But all right. Julie says, will you be strict on the meditation technique when you ordain Buddhist, when you have your monastery? When I say strict, I mean specific. I don't think so. I'll be strict in terms of in relation to the suttas, in relation to like Satipatthana and Anapanasati. But I understand that people have their own kind of proclivities and their own tendencies of practice, that I don't think the places in the monastics that do try to force you into their square their round hole, like the square peg into the round hole, I don't know that that's necessarily the best. I think people realize, and people that go to those kind of places, eventually they understand that it fits for them or it doesn't, and then they move on. So I don't think I would be overly strict, in terms you must follow this technique from this tradition. Yeah. I mean, if they start doing, loud mantras and doing all kinds of wacky stuff, then no, no, that's definitely not. But even at Bhavana, Bhante G is not like that either. Bhante G is never like, okay, you do this technique, and then when you're done with that technique, then I'm going to do that technique. Bhante G is not like that. Yeah, so I don't think I would be either. All right. Let's share screen. We'll do a little bit. We'll do some sutta roulette. So for those of you who have never done sutta roulette before, basically what this is that this is a really cool exercise for a couple of things. The first is that we don't know what we're going to read just randomly because we're choosing random numbers. But the second is, if you're like kind of new to the suttas and you don't really have that ability to navigate it very well, I'm sharing the screen and you can see how to get to certain things. So this is kind of can be a help for new people. to understand how to navigate the suttas a little bit, at least on Sutta Central. So this is how it works. I'm going to say, type a number between X and Y. And then I'll say 3, 2, 1, go. And then you type the number that you choose. And whoever's first, that's the number that will be part of the sutta. And so we do it twice. Usually it's the first number for the chapter, or the book, or the samyutta, the group basically. And then the next number is for the specific sutta. And so, but then if somebody has good internet and they keep getting first, then I'll choose other people. But mostly, whoever's first, I'll choose that number, and then we'll read the sutta. I'll go through, and we'll go from there. So for now, I'm going to do a little break here in the chat. So a number between 1 and 11 in 3, 2, 1, go. Type a number between 1 and 11 in the chat. All right, so number 7, Karuna. So we have the Book of Sevens. That's where we will be going, to the Book of Sevens. Now, so we see this is the Anguttara Nikaya, and there are 11 books in the Anguttara Nikaya. So if somebody wants to give you a link or tell you the sutta from the Anguttara Nikaya, the first number is going to be a number between 1 and 11. So we are going to be in the 7th. So here we see here, Book of Sevens. And so we have first 50 and second 50. So we have 100 suttas in this. Usually, probably the second half is going to be really short suttas. So I think what I'm going to say is, for the next number, a number between 1 and 60. In 3, 2, 1, go. All right, Julie gets first. So number 47. So we are looking at Anguttara Nikaya, number 7.47. So we are in the Book of Sevens. You can look up top here. I don't know. I think you can see. Can you see my mouse cursor? I think you can. So we have Book of Sevens. And we want to go to 47. So that'll be in the first 50. We go through the chapters. You see here under it says AN 7.1 to 10. So we want to go down. Here we go. The chapter on great sacrifice. And then we can see here the number. We're on 44. So we want to go down to 47. And just like that, we have our sutta. So fires, second. Let's see. Oh, it's a long one too. All right. Let me make it a little bigger for you guys. Now at that time, the Brahmin Uga Tasarira, that's a kind of a cool name. I like that. Uga Tasarira had prepared a large sacrifice. Bulls, bullocks, heifers, goats, and rams, 500 of each, had been led to the post for the sacrifice. Then the Brahmin Uga Tasarira went up to the Buddha and exchanged greetings with him. When the greetings and polite conversation were over, he sat down to one side and said to the Buddha, Master Gotama, I have heard that kindling the sacrificial fire and raising the sacrificial post is very fruitful and beneficial. We had somebody that they had, the Brahmins had people who kept the fire alive, right? We see this in many places. from the Vestal Virgins of Rome who kept the fires alive to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. They have a fire that is always burning. Like this is a very ancient motif that you see across many cultures. So the Brahmin says, I hear this is beneficial. So the Buddha says, I've also heard this, Brahmin. For a second time and a third time, Ugatasarira said to the Buddha, Master Gotama, I've heard that kindling the sacrificial fire and raising the sacrificial post is very fruitful and beneficial. I've also heard this, Brahmin. Then Master Gotama and I are in a total agreement on this matter. When he said this, Venerable Ananda said to Ugatasarira, Brahmin, you shouldn't ask the Buddha in this way. You should ask him, right? Because he asked the Buddha, I heard this. And the Buddha's like, yeah, I heard this too. But this is how you should ask the Buddha. Sir, I want to kindle the sacrificial fire and raise the sacrificial post. May the Buddha please advise and instruct me. It will be for my lasting welfare and happiness. Then Ugatasarira said to the Buddha, Sir, I want to kindle the sacrificial fire and raise the sacrificial post. May Master Gotama please advise me and instruct me. It will be for my lasting welfare and happiness. Even before kindling the sacrificial fire and raising the sacrificial post, one raises 3 unskillful knives, which ripen and result in suffering. What 3? The knives of body, speech, and mind. Even before kindling the sacrificial fire and raising the sacrificial post, one gives rise to the thought, may this many bulls, bullocks, heifers, goats, and rams be slaughtered for the sacrifice. Thinking, may I make goodness, one makes wickedness. Thinking, may I do good, one does bad. Thinking, may I seek the path to a good rebirth, one seeks the path to a bad rebirth. Even before kindling the sacrificial fire and raising the sacrificial post, one raises this first unskillful mental knife, which ripens and results in suffering. Furthermore, even before kindling the sacrificial fire and raising the sacrificial post, one says such things as, may this many bulls, bullocks, heifers, goats, and rams be slaughtered for the sacrifice. Thinking, may I make goodness, one makes wickedness. Thinking, may I do good, one does bad. Thinking, may I seek the path to a good rebirth, one seeks the path to a bad rebirth. Even before kindling the sacrificial fire and raising the sacrificial post, one raises the second unskillful verbal knife, which ripens and results in suffering. Furthermore, even before kindling the sacrificial fire and raising the sacrificial post, one first personally undertakes preparations for the sacrificial slaughter of bulls, bullocks, heifers, goats, and rams. Thinking, may I make goodness, they make wickedness. Thinking, may I do good, one does bad. Thinking, may I seek the path to good rebirth, one seeks the path to a bad rebirth. Even before kindling the sacrificial fire and raising the sacrificial post, one raises this third unskillful bodily knife, which ripens and results in suffering. Even before kindling the sacrificial fire and raising the sacrificial post, one raises these 3 unskillful knives, which ripen and result in suffering. Brahmin, these 3 fires should be given up and rejected and not cultivated. What 3? The fires of greed, the fires of hatred, the fires of delusion. And why should the fire of greed be given up and rejected, not cultivated? A greedy person does bad things by way of body, speech, and mind. When their body breaks up after death, they're reborn in a place of loss, a bad place, the underworld, hell. That's why the fire of greed should be given up and rejected, not cultivated. And why should the fire of hate be given up and rejected, not cultivated? A hateful person does bad things by way of body, speech, and mind. When their body breaks up after death, they're reborn in a place of loss, a bad place, the underworld, hell. That's why the fire of hate should be given up and rejected, not cultivated. And why should the fire of delusion be given up and rejected, not cultivated? A deluded person does bad things by way of body, speech, and mind. When their body breaks up after death, they're reborn in a place of loss, a bad place, the underworld, hell. That's why the fire of delusion should be given up and rejected, not cultivated. These three fires should be given up and rejected, not cultivated. So you see here, this is the Buddha doing what he does many, many times with the suttas, is taking frameworks from the Brahmanic tradition and flipping them over and using them in his own way with his own definitions. Brahman, you should properly and happily take care of three fires: honoring, respecting, esteeming, and venerating them. What three? The fire of those worthy of offerings dedicated to devas, the fire of a householder, and the fire of those worthy of religious donation. And what is the fire of those worthy of offerings dedicated to the gods? Your mother and father are called the fire of those worthy of offerings dedicated to the gods. Why is that? Since it is from them that you've been incubated and produced. So you should properly and happily take care of this fire, honoring, respecting, esteeming, and venerating it. And what is the fire of a householder? Your children, partners, bondservants, employees, and workers are called a householder's fire. So you should properly take care of this fire, honoring, respecting, esteeming, and venerating it. And what is the fire of those worthy of religious donation? The ascetics and Brahmins who avoid intoxication and negligence are settled in patience and gentleness, who tame, calm, and extinguish themselves, are called the fire of those worthy of religious donation. So you should properly and happily take care of this fire, honoring, respecting, esteeming, and venerating it. You should properly and happily take care of these three fires, honoring, respecting, esteeming, and venerating them. But the wood fire Brahman should from time to time be fanned, watched over with equanimity, extinguished or put aside. When he said this, the Brahman Ugatasarira said to the Buddha, "Excellent, Master Gautama, excellent. From this day forth, may Master Gautama remember me as a lay follower who has gone for refuge for life. Master Gautama, I now set free these 500 bulls, 500 bullocks, 500 heifers, 500 goats, and 500 rams. I give them life. May they eat grass and drink cool water and enjoy a cool breeze." All right. That was a nice sutta. See what happens when you do sutta roulette? You never know what's going to come up. But I think now about this time is good for us to do some meditation. So we'll meditate for a little bit, and then we'll close out for the night. All right. Set your body up in whatever comfortable and stable position works for you. We'll spend some time scanning through the body mindfully. Bring your focus to your feet. By bring focus, this means to focus in on any feeling or sensation arising in that part of the body, such as the feeling of the feet pressing against the floor, cushion, the opposite leg, however it may be disposed. When you do this practice, you want to develop the ability to see and understand very subtle feelings of discomfort or subtle imbalances in your posture, so you can adjust as needed. And as you do this and you find your good posture, you'll be able to sit for longer periods with less pain. Move up through the ankles into the calves. Through the knees, into the thighs. What's the feeling of the thighs pressing against the chair, the cushion? Up through to the hips and pelvis. This is a very important part of the body for your posture, especially if you are sitting on a meditation cushion. Pay close attention to the position of your pelvic bones, the sits bones, and the buttocks, aiming for a balanced position that supports the lower and upper body. Move up through the spine, the abdomen and the chest. Checking that the spine is not leaning or slouching here or there. Resting comfortably. Well supported by the hips and pelvis. up through the shoulders, making sure they're hanging loosely, not scrunched up and tight. Then down through to the elbows and hands, observing how the elbows and hands also impact your posture, your spine. And finally up to the head, checking that the head is also not leaning and slouching here or there, chin parallel to the floor. Once you're done setting up your body in a comfortable and stable position, let the body go and take 3 deep breaths. And then let the breath go. From here on in, try not to manipulate or control the breath in any way. Your body has been breathing from the moment you were born, will continue to do so until the second you die. Doesn't need you to do its job. Your job is to simply observe, investigate, and abide with the breath as the body breathes in and the body breathes out. As you're following your breath, your mind will become bored, will seek to run away to the past or the future, across the world or the galaxy, into various fantasies and stories. Or an external distraction, like a sound will arise that will agitate you. Your mind will chase after it like a barking dog. After a while, it will slowly start to dawn on you that you have been taken away from the breath for whatever reason. At that point, fully acknowledge that you've been taken away from the breath. Try to come back to full focus and mindfulness. Practice letting go of the distraction by neither getting agitated and pushing it away, nor by continuing to be excited and clinging to it. See if you can do your best to let it go, to let it be, to give it no energy, effort, or attention. Let it go as it came and follow the breath. Whenever you're taken away, acknowledge, let go, and return. Over and over. Acknowledge, let go, and return. Acknowledge, let go, and return. Always come back to the breath. The breath is home base. Always there, doing its job, ready for you to come follow it towards a more calm and tranquil mind.
Slowly begin to open your eyes, becoming aware of the room around you and your body's position in it. Reflecting on the state of your mind before and after the meditation, and contemplating any experiences that stood out in your practice. And while we do that, I'll read some Dhammapada verses and then we'll close out. Probably, if not my favorite, my top three favorite parts of the Dhammapada, the thousands. Lots of great wisdom in this one. Better than 1,000 useless words is one useful word, hearing which one attains peace. Better than 1,000 useless verses is one useful verse, hearing which one attains peace. Better than reciting 100 meaningless verses is the reciting of one verse of Dhamma, hearing which one attains peace. Though one may conquer 1,000 times 1,000 men in battle, yet he indeed is the noblest victor who conquers himself. Self-conquest is far better than the conquest of others. Not even a god, an angel, Mara, or Brahma can turn into defeat the victory of a person who is self-subdued and ever restrained in conduct. Though month after month for 100 years one should offer sacrifices by the thousands, yet if only for a moment one should worship those perfected minds of that honor is indeed better than a century of sacrifice. Though for 100 years one should tend the sacrificial fire, we just heard about that, didn't we? Should tend the sacrificial fire in the forest, yet if only for a moment one should worship those of perfected minds, that worship is indeed better than a century of sacrifice. Whatever gifts and oblations one seeking merit might offer in this world for a whole year, all that is not worth 1/4 of the merit gained by revering the upright ones, which is truly excellent. To one ever eager to revere and serve the elders, these 4 blessings accrue: long life and beauty, happiness and power. Better is it to live one day virtuous and meditative than to live 100 years immoral and uncontrolled. Better it is to live one day wise and meditative than to live 100 years foolish and uncontrolled. Better it is to live one day strenuous and resolute than to live 100 years sluggish and dissipated. Better it is to live one day seeing the rise and fall of things than to live 100 years without ever seeing the rise and fall of things. Better it is to live one day seeing the deathless than to live 100 years without ever seeing the deathless. Better it is to live one day seeing the supreme truth than to live 100 years without ever seeing the supreme truth. All right, friends, let's close out. So if you are new to this, if you've joined us for the first time and you've never been to the website or seen any of the other things that we do with Maggasekha, you can go to the website scrolling on the bottom of the page, maggasekha.org, maggasekha.org. On this website, you will find notifications for anytime there's a new video, a new article, a new retreat, all the different offerings that I offer through Maggasekha. On that website, on the top right hand, you can put your email in and you will get notified by email every time there's a new update.
Same thing with the YouTube channel. You can subscribe and click the bell, and you'll get notified by email every time there's a new update. And with that, I think we're good. I think I'm going to cut this a little short. I'm getting a little tired, even though it's 6:42. I don't know that I've fully gotten used to the time change yet. But I think this is good for us for now. Like I said, tomorrow afternoon I'm flying back. So we will have morning monastery experience tomorrow morning, but not Wednesday. And then all the other normally scheduled things, Saturday Insight Timer, Sunday evening Sutta reading on the Discord, and next Dhammapalooza, all will go on as normal. All right, friends, Sugi Hotu, may you be well and at ease. Practice well and be well. May you have a spiritually successful and peaceful practice until we meet again. Sugi. Have a good week.